We come in to vote. All of a sudden, we start hearing rumblings. Oh, we're not going to vote for the Build Back Better bill because the New Dems wanted something called a CBO score to make sure that Build Back Better was going to be paid for. Now, understand, these people ain't won a CBO score the whole year. Last day, they won a CBO score. I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I go to the CBC meeting. CBC is pissed, but the CBC is like, yo, we support this. Something going on here.
I feel like getting railroaded.
Yes, like on purpose. Like this was moderate, corporate, conservative Dems making a power move.
Yes.
I'm learning how grimy this place is in real time.
Right.
As all this stuff is happening.
Right.
And to put the icing on the cake, Biden himself calls in to the CPC meeting to convince members to get on board.
Wow.
And once he did that,
that was it. It was a wrap.
Everybody was on board.
Right. Welcome, y'all. This is Barry Grant Jr. Welcome to the All Leaving Podcast. This is a special interview. I have a very, very good guest today. When you talk about people that speak their minds, people that are unapologetic, that no matter what is out there, no matter what the odds are, they're going to always stay true to themselves because they want to make sure that they get the truth out and make sure that they do the right thing rather than the wrong thing. So I have a father, an educator. I have a former congressman, a former member of the squad, still in the squad, I would say. You know what I'm saying? He's kind of like the outside free agent right now, but he's still doing his thing. Just like I said, unapologetic, a leader in our community. Welcome to the show, Jamaal Bowman. How you doing, man?
What's up, brother? I'm well, man. How are you? Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
Of course. Now, thank you so much for doing this, for taking the time, man. This is an honor for me because, I've watched you grow through, going into the public space and being in a public servant, and it's just, I need more people like you.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
Thank you, man.
Because,
appreciate that.
In politics, when you watch somebody and you try to say, okay, what do they do that's so great? What's their messaging? What do they do for me? Mm-hmm. The first thing that you actually look for is somebody who not only looks like you, right, but speaks your language, right? You don't necessarily have to be this talky, spokey person. It's about how you can be able to get to everybody and make everybody understand what the message is. So I think for you, that's your like superpower, that you can be able to get to everybody, make them understand what the situation is, what the issues are, and be able to make them get it and make them be able to, get out there and help the masses. Mm-hmm. So, what you did in Congress for the 4 years that you were there, what you continue to do. I just want to tell you, from somebody who's admired you, admires the Democratic Party, although it's a mess right now.
Yeah. Time out on that. We'll get into that.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But shouts to you for all the work that you're doing.
No, I appreciate that, man. I just try to be myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just, always try to be myself first and foremost, and try to just, I come from the places in which I'm trying to now reconnect to while being, a public figure,
right?
At this moment. And so, raised by a single mom, lived in public housing, we didn't grow up with much money, public schools my whole life. Didn't go the traditional path of I wasn't really raised in a black church. Didn't go to Ivy Leagues. I'm not in the Divine Nine. I'm not, in a fraternity, not like that. So I'm a regular dude,
right.
At the end of the day. And so, what I've always kind of felt was, we need to pull the people in who don't really rock with politics.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, for me, it's about meeting them where they are and just, connecting and letting them know, listen, this is my background. This is where I came from. This is what I'm about. And now I'm in Congress. Like, look at what I'm here. Look at me being here. Look at what I'm trying to do. So one, I just try to be myself. And then two, you know, it's the educator in me. You know what I'm saying? And in education, you're constantly trying to demystify things for your students. You're trying to break things down so that they can get it and understand it. Right. You know, when you talk about how policy is made in Washington, it gets really complicated. So how can I, you know, demystify that and break it down and simplify it in a way where I can connect with the average person who don't got time to, you know, read the New York Times cover to cover or watch all the news shows, or, you know, they're working, they're going to school, they're picking up kids, they're dropping kids off. So just try to be authentic, and I'm always trying to be the educator.
No, of course. Yeah. I mean, listen, you know, we'll definitely get into that in regards to how civics in this country, especially in New York, we need to be a lot better with teaching civics, but in a way that people can digest it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the biggest thing, is that, you know, when people see things, they get really, really confused. So what do? They go to all of these other outlets and they get all of this misinformation. And now you now go from not knowing anything to now you just have a whole bunch of confused minds and confused information out there, and you don't know what to believe instead of getting it the right way and understanding
and it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
So like when people get overwhelmed, they unplug. You know,
exactly.
and they plug into other things. Right. And what we need is for people to plug in just a little bit more to politics, because you need to know what's going on in order for you to change things.
In order for you to change things.
So following what's going on, you know, going to your local city council meeting or town council meeting or village or school board, like going a little bit, checking out those websites, you know, and definitely voting in every election. You know, I remember, man, you know, just like my whole life, people telling me, make sure you vote, make sure you vote, make sure you vote, but not given the context
as to what
like,
am I voting
why?
for? Why?
Like I get it. Like, you know, in theory, right? Of course, I should vote. I should exercise my right to vote. And people died, so I had that right. But if I don't know the candidates, if I don't know what they're standing for, if I don't know when election day is, if there's a bunch of information I don't know and I go into the voting booth and there's a bunch of names of people I don't even recognize, who do I vote for? Or just pick the Democrat. Right. So now we're at a place where in some parts of the country, you only got like 20% of people voting or less. And so when you don't have people voting, you have what we have now, which is, you know, in my opinion, you know, a dictatorship government.
100%.
So anyway,
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, you kind of got into it. So obviously, let's start from the beginning. You were born in the city?
Yes.
Okay. How was growing up in the city?
It was fucking amazing. So, excuse me, I don't know about cursing.
No, you can't. It's fine.
It was great, man. I mean, you know, I'm you know, I don't know if I'm an unk or OG. I saw like a recent breakdown somewhere.
I think you close to unk. You close to unk. Because I hear unk with me.
Yeah, you're definitely in the unk range. Even though you present, in my opinion, as more like a big brother than an unk.
Right.
And I may present more as an unk to some people, but I think I'm at the OG stage now.
You definitely
I'm 49.
Oh, yeah, that's OG.
And that's OG, right? So I'm an OG. So I'm born in 76. It's funny, my daughter yesterday was asking me, like I was doing something on the computer. She was like, do you think about like, or is it weird when you think about how when you were a kid, like you didn't have any of this stuff? Right. She's asked me out of nowhere. My daughter's 11. And I was like, well, it was just beginning to start. Like it wasn't at this level, but like my friends had Apples.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And Commodores, and I had a Nintendo a couple of years later. So anyway, but I also shared with her, like, you know, movies in the 80s was beginning to plant the seed.
Yes. About
what was coming.
What was coming.
And then Star Wars, which is, you know, one of my favorite movies of all time, came out in 77. I'm born in 76. Right. So, you know, the arts was always pushing us.
Right. It's the same thing with me. As an 85 baby, you know, my generation grew up with technology.
Yeah.
Same thing with you, right? You were on kind of like the beginning of it, but
Yeah.
we took this thing
Yeah,
and then rolled with it. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was like the beginning of technology, but it was also like, I mean, it was not. It was the beginning of like a cycle of gentrification that came a little bit later. But like, yeah, you know, lived in East River Projects till I was about 8, moved to the Upper East Side, 92nd and 2nd, you know, after my grandmother passed away, and lived with my mother full time. And I just remember, man, I mean, when, you know, being outside all the time, you know, mad parks, Upper East Side, you got museums, you got Central Park, you got all that. I just remember like taking walks and just exploring all of that shit. Because when you live in, you know, when you live in public housing, you don't really got all that. So when I moved, I just remember being introduced to all of that, and it's just like sparking my mind and unlocking my imagination. And I remember school being mad fun, and growing up state just being dope. Now as we got older, you know, it was also like the crack cocaine and AIDS epidemic, right? So you growing up with that as well, like, you know, make sure you always got condoms on you because you don't want to be out there, you know what I'm saying, whatever.
Right. Cashing up, yep.
And then, you know, I had family members who were addicted, and so we had to deal with that. But it also brought a new level of like kind of violence in the communities because, you know, up until maybe 8th, 9th grade, you know, you square up and you have a fight and then be done with it.
Done with it, yeah.
After 9th grade, with the crack stuff, you know, people started. It was like guns in the street now, you know, and bullets flying. So, you know, so it was all of that, man. And you know, I had a lot of fun in school, but I also didn't do super well in school because I went to school to have fun and to mess with the girls.
Focus on other things.
I didn't go to get good grades.
Right,
You know what I'm saying? And, you know, my bad on that. But at some point, it was 10th grade, I got my report card, I failed every class. Wow. Because I was just acting up. And my pops lived out in Jersey, so I told my moms and him, I was like, yo, I want to go live with my pops. Moved out there, you know, got my grades together, started playing football, and the rest is history. But growing up in the city is dope, man. Yeah.
Being a New York City kid is, I tell people all the time, it's different. Like, you know, you see kids from other places, other states. Like, growing up in the city, you develop this multifaceted ability to critically think, to be able to deal with adversity on the fly, and also understand when life moves fast, you know how to go with it. So when you go to other places and it's very slow and more controlled, you're like, this is easy.
Yeah.
Like, you can be able to kind of navigate anywhere around the world, especially in the United States. Like, and people always know a New Yorker. You can always tell them.
Oh, 100%.
Oh, you're from New York. You're from New York. Okay. Because we just stick out. We stick out no matter where we go.
I don't know if that's always a good thing, but
Right. It's not always a good thing.
But no, to your point, there's a rhythm to the city, and there's a tempo to the city.
Right.
You know, that's just unlike anywhere else I've ever been.
Right.
And, you know, it's funny. So my wife is from the city, technically. She's from the Bronx. I'm actually from Manhattan.
Right.
But she don't really like going into Manhattan because Manhattan is like busier.
Yeah.
You know, it's more people, it's louder, it's just a lot going on. When I go into Manhattan, I feel alive.
Right.
Because I just love.
You love that commotion,
it, man. I love the rhythm, I love the tempo, I love the energy, I love the people, man. The diversity, man, is so dope.
Yeah.
It's just dope, man. You know, that's why I love Yonkers. Like,
Right.
I've been living in Yonkers now almost, you know, maybe like 12 years or so, 12, 13 years or so. Yonkers is like a 6th borough almost.
Right.
It's like multicultural diversity, but it's not to the point we're made. Like, the city is also a place where people walk. Like, it's a walking city.
Yeah.
And so we would walk 100 blocks and that just be what it is. Yonkers ain't really designed to walk around like that.
Right.
But yeah, man, the energy of the city is just unlike any place else.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah,
I went to high school. So I went to St. John's Prep in Astoria, and we used to go ahead and go hop on the train, hop on the N train, get to Lexington, and we walked to Harlem.
Yeah.
Every day, like, because it was just the thing to do.
Yeah, it was
you know what I mean?
life, son.
It's life.
It's
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
It's life. Yeah, man, for sure.
So playing football, how was that?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was great. It was hard though because like, so the thing about the city, you know, I don't know if they still call it this, but you know, people used to call it the concrete jungle.
Yep.
And so there's not many fields or green spaces. So when I was in junior high, I wanted to play football in high school, but there's no real football programs in high school. So in Manhattan in high school, so like I had to look at the outer boroughs. So Queens, Brooklyn, even the Bronx.
Right.
They had they had programs, and you know, so as I'm applying to high schools, which is what you do in the city, you know, they used to give us this thick ass book, and you would just look through it and look through every high school and figure out which one you wanted to go to. I was just looking for schools with football programs, and because of the distance of many schools, they had zoning restrictions. So if you lived too far,
You couldn't go there.
You couldn't go. But because one school I found had like a special program, ironically a computer science program, there's like, okay, anybody could come. So I applied there and got in. It was a terrible decision. It was August Martin High School. Not only was it a wild high school, it was mad far. It was mad far. So I used to take the 6 train to 51st Street, then take the E train to the second to last stop, and then you get a $1 van to the school. It's like, ain't nobody trying to travel 2 hours back and forth to someplace I never really been
foreign
before.
to you,
Like as far like Queens is, a lot of people don't know this. Like the city's 5 boroughs, but when you're growing up, you kind of stay in your borough. You don't really go to other boroughs. You don't even go to other hoods.
Right.
You kind of stay
within your stuff. Yeah.
Right. So I went out there to play. Ended up spraining my ankle in the summer, so I didn't even play. So I'm just going out there just to go out there. Like, I'm not doing this. So I transferred to school in the city, but then went out to Jersey. When I got out to Jersey, that shit was like the Wonder Years. It was like white suburbs.
Yeah. So
It was
everything's
like what I saw on
completely
the TV.
different.
So it was like, you know, it's not a city, right? It's the suburbs, so you need a car. The school, and this is what made me want to transfer out there, the school had 4 football fields. So in Manhattan, you can't find one. This one school in this one little town have 4.
Wow.
Right? The building felt like a brand new building, and so I went out there. The first year I was ineligible, because I failed every class in the city. But then my senior year I played, and I played well. I did well. I was second team All State, I think, and played in a county All-Star game. Was co-MVP of that All-Star game and got a partial scholarship to college.
Oh, amazing.
You know, played 3 years at the University of New Haven. And then, graduated college and got into education.
What position?
Rover.
Okay.
So in high school it was D tackle. In college it was Rover. Rover is like strong safety / outside linebacker.
Right.
So yeah, man, it was dope.
That's good. That's good. So you got a football background, and then decided to get into education. So
yes.
What led you to education? Because obviously, like, being able to lead and being able to lead young people is, not everybody can do it. Not everybody is good at it, but it takes a certain type of person to want to be an educator. So what pushed you in that direction?
I needed a job, man. It wasn't that deep, son.
Yeah.
I needed a job. I mean, going back to the football thing for a minute. So, I think every human should play sports
100%.
or do something where you really have to push yourself and or be competitive.
I totally agree.
I just think it develops your values, your character, your integrity, your work ethic. Football is the ultimate team sport.
Yeah.
Like if you doing your job and the dude next to you ain't doing their job, shit ain't gonna work.
Right.
Right? You're not gonna be successful. Like I don't care how dope Tom Brady is, if he ain't have a good offensive line, he wasn't going to be that good.
Exactly.
And if he didn't have a great coach, he wasn't going to be that good. So it's like it all got to work together.
Right.
So football teaches you all that, right? And so I just wanted to say that because when you get into education, those skills are transferable.
Right.
You know, the values, the work ethic, the intensity in terms of inspiring your kids to be their best.
Absolutely.
And so I needed a job. My degree was in business. I looked into business for a little while, but it was too corporate. You know, I didn't have a background of like being around a lot of white people who was talking white and shit. You know, that was like the corporate thing. So I didn't feel comfortable. I wasn't really good at the code switching thing.
Yeah.
And also like, you know, looking back, right, you need like role models to kind of show you, like help you transition
Correct.
into being a professional. I really didn't have that. You know what I mean? In terms of from the business side of things. So anyway, I needed a job, and I had a friend, one of my best friends, her mom was a kindergarten teacher. And she was like, hey, go look at the Board of Ed. So in the city, when you apply to be a teacher, when you look at it, when you consider going into education, you go, you get fingerprinted, make sure you're not, you know, a killer or nothing, and your fingerprints come back clear.
Right.
And then they send you to school districts to get something called a file number. And then once you get that file number, you can then go apply for jobs in schools. So I went to Harlem, ironically, got a file number there, and then I went on 2 interviews. First interview was in the Lower East Side with a bunch of, you know, progressive, you know, non-black people. And it was a round table interview, a bunch of people sitting around a rectangular table, and asked me one question. It was like, what's your philosophy of education? I had no idea. I'm like, I just need a job, yo. You're asking me about philosophy.
You're asking too much.
I don't even know what you're talking about, son. So I was speechless. And it was like, thank you for coming in. I left. That was my first interview.
Wow.
One question, you're out of here. My second interview was in the South Bronx, District 9, principal. By the way, let me tell you how dysfunctional public education was at this time. This principal was principal of 3 schools at the same time.
How's that even possible?
It's not possible. It's insanity. Which, again, we could do a whole nother conversation on education alone.
Right.
But anyway, she sees me walk in. It's a job fair. She sees me walk in, and she takes one look at me, and she says, are you ready? And I say, yes. And she hires me on the spot.
Wow.
So think about that contrast.
Right.
Right? You have one school district that was much more buttoned up and had their shit together a little bit, so they knew what they was looking for.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I didn't fit there. You had another school district that wasn't as buttoned up, but they knew what they was looking for as well. They was looking for like black men,
Yes.
you know, to come teach these young black and brown kids. And so when she saw me, she said, are you ready? I was like, yeah. So she hired me, and then I went to, the first day I went to the school, we had like, back then we had like 2 training days before we started teaching. And as soon as I walked in, man, I felt like this is where God wanted me to be. It just felt that, like spiritually, it felt right. And I fell in love with it, man. I fell in love with being in the school. I fell in love with education, fell in love with my colleagues, of course, fell in love with the kids and the family and the community. And yeah, man, and I became, you know, whereas in junior high school, you know, high school, I didn't really take learning seriously.
Right.
Now I was obsessed with learning.
Right, because you're now responsible
Yeah.
for young lives to be able to mold them to the next.
Yeah,
phase of their
I
lives.
became obsessed with learning. Wow. I became obsessed with, because to be a great teacher, you got to be a learner first.
Right.
And you got to be a great learner. And
Right.
so as I was going through my lesson planning and reading through curriculum and reading books on education and just trying to like be the best educator I could be, I had to become obsessed with learning, and obsessed with with what we call the pedagogy of it, right? Like, how do you take a standard and break it down and teach it to the kids so they can master the standard?
Right.
So I just became obsessed with that, and I got into grad school because you had to get a master's to stay in education, and again, I just as a matter of fact, just real quick, I had a very bad undergrad GPA, and again, I was never applying myself. I was football and hanging out, and because my GPA was so poor, it was hard to get into grad schools. Like, grad schools wouldn't even let me in. And I started getting pissed. I'm like, yo, I'm mad smart. Like, what the hell's wrong?
Right.
What the hell they doing? Not letting me
realizing
in.
that,
Not
listen,
realizing.
they're looking at the
but it was my
transcript.
fault because
Yeah.
I never showed improved before. So I was like, all right. So Mercy College let me in on probation.
Wow.
I was like, I'm gonna kill it. I'm gonna let y'all know, like, I had something to prove,
Right.
basically. And so I got in, and I graduated with like a 3.5, and that's with an F on my transcript. Because I just got tired, whatever. But like, I had like all A's and like a couple A minuses, and then that one F threw my shit off. Anyway, but I just became obsessed, man. Like, not just in grad school, but outside of grad school. I had this one friend, shout out to E. Mark Lewis. I would run into him from time to time. He used to sell insurance. And he used to joke with me. He used to be like, yo, every time I see you, you got a book in your hand. So yeah, like, I just became obsessed, man, and to try to be the best teacher I could be. That's what led to me, getting a master's in counseling, but then ultimately becoming a school principal.
Wow. So becoming a school principal, obviously that's a bigger responsibility, right?
Yeah.
How was that?
Yeah. How do I describe it? Yeah, responsibility, it's even bigger than that, man. It's accountability. It's like, so, I taught in elementary schools and in elementary school for like 5-6 years. I taught 4th grade, I taught math, I was a crisis intervention teacher, I did a lot of different things there. And then I went to be a guidance counselor and dean of students at this high school. High School for Arts and Technology at the MLK campus. And I was there for 3 years as mostly a dean.
Right.
But I also did counseling and also taught classes. And going from elementary school to high school was deep because, the elementary kids, they're from the hood, whatever, they real rough around the edges. And I thought by high school they grow out of that naturally. Right. But they don't grow out of it naturally. Like, if there's not intervention and support, they don't grow out of it. So, they had, in King, they had Latin Kings, Bloods, Yetas, you know what I mean? Like, it was that level, but it was dope, you know what I'm saying? Because, like, these are the kids I want to work with, you know what I'm saying? This is where I want to be. So I was, everything, I'm a passionate person, and everything I do, I kind of do it very passionately, especially education. And so, like, I loved being at MLK as the dean, but it was also a struggle because we had a principal that wasn't really, like, in my opinion, wasn't like really doing enough for the student body. We were just kind of doing basic school, in a way that, like, it wasn't inspiring for the kids or for me.
And when you see something like that, when you see a principal not going above and beyond to be able to create change and real structure to be able to help the kids be successful, what does that, first off, do to the teachers that are there? And what does that do for you as somebody who realizing that, and how do you make change of that, right? Like,
yeah, man.
It gotta be demoralizing.
Yeah, so that's a great word. It was demoralizing. And because, like, very early in my career, I realized I was more than a teacher to my kids. Right. I was a mentor and I was a father figure. So just like my father wasn't around a lot in my life, the kids I taught, it was the same thing. So I knew I was that to them. So it always felt more like a calling than just like a job. You know what I mean? So I've always felt that way from elementary school. Always felt that way. So my motivation to become like a nerd type student while I was teaching was also because like, yo, we need a revolution, son.
Yeah.
Like we can't allow this to continue, right?
Gotta break the cycle.
Gotta break the cycle. And just going back to like what I grew up on, like I grew up on, you know, KRS One, Public Enemy, and Tupac Shakur, right? Rakim. We grew up on knowledge of self, right? We grew up on community transformation. They were inspired by, you know, Malcolm X, Black Panther Party, and others during the 60s, right? So that's my lineage. And so to be at a school with like a principal who wasn't really aligned to that, with teachers who weren't aligned to that, it was demoralizing. And the tipping point for me, there were many, but one of them was, you know, it was a scanning school. So kids had to go through metal detectors every day.
Wow.
And that's demoralizing in and of itself. But we implemented this policy where if kids were late to first period, we had to, and they used this word, capture them in the cafeteria and pretty much not allow them to go to first period if they were late. And we had to sit with them. So this was the policy that was implemented, and I had to enforce it as the dean. So that shit got me like depressed, man.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Because you always seen the same kids every day or the same type.
and they're black and brown kids.
Right, that's what I'm
And
saying,
King is
right.
right across the street from LaGuardia.
Right.
LaGuardia is a specialized high school, mostly non-black and brown kids, no metal detectors. They go in and out as they want. So right across the street, I'm seeing liberation, and in our school, I'm seeing containment.
Containment, suppression, yeah.
Right? And I'm enforcing this as the dean. So shit was hard, man. So what I did was I started writing. Like I picked up this hobby where I would just buy composition notebooks and I would just write, man. I would just write like my thoughts, my feelings, and like my vision for education. Because you got me in grad school learning all this dope shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, why we ain't implementing none of this
Yeah,
in
let
our
me apply
schools?
some of this stuff, yeah.
Let's implement this, right? So I started writing like a dream scenario where like, if I opened up my own school, what would it look like? This is before I even thought about going into school leadership. I was writing about it for 2 years before I even did it.
Wow.
And then, so it was a tough time for that. It was also a tough time because there were like horrific school shootings that were happening around this time as well. Like the year before I got into education, Columbine happened. Couple years in, Virginia Tech happened, you know. And then around the same time, it's like a blur, I always forget before or after, Sandy Hook happened.
Sandy Hook, right.
And when Sandy Hook happened, yo, like, I just couldn't believe, you know, we were talking off camera about COVID and how it forced us to stop. I couldn't believe the world didn't stop after Sandy Hook.
Yeah.
Like, we just kept going.
Yeah, I think at that point, we got so numb to it. And it wasn't even, you know, we didn't have so many of them, but like the typical news cycle was, you know, everybody's upset, outraged, and we get, you know,
Thoughts and prayers.
And then 2 months later,
it's crazy, but yes, but to be in education,
it stays with you.
right?
It
Like
stays with you.
that, my worst nightmare was someone running up in the school and shooting up the school.
Right.
It was like my worst nightmare, right?
Yeah.
Sandy Hook though was different because these were first graders. These were kids that were 6 years old, B.
Right.
I couldn't believe, like, we didn't have a national day of mourning.
Nothing.
We didn't do nothing, and it wasn't like 2 or 3 sixth graders. It was like 40 of them. I forget the number. It was mad. It was sixth grade. I'm lying.
Yeah.
These kids were 6 years old, not sixth graders. I'm messing up the history. These were 6-year-olds, first graders, Sandy Hook was a mass slaughter of first grade students, 6 years old. And we had no National Day of Mourning. We had no pause. We just kept it moving. Right. So that time when I was in King, it was what was happening in King, but it was also what was happening in the country, man. And just one day I was like, yo, I want to go into school leadership. I want to go into administration. And so there was this program, New Leaders for New Schools. It was a national principal recruitment and training program. You usually have to be nominated for the program. So I created a fake email account and used that email account to nominate Jamaal Bowman to the program. And that led to them emailing me to invite me to submit an application. And so I submitted the application, and the application was brutal, man. It was like 7 essays, but I had been writing in my composition notebooks. So I was comfortable. And I had a lot of ideas I wanted to write about, you know what I mean? So wrote the 7 essays, went to the first interview. First interview was like 3.5 hours. Dog, after that interview, this program was so great because like during the interview, the goal was to beat the shit out of you. Was to ask you like the hardest questions possible. And even when you felt like you gave a good answer, they would have a rebuttal or a counter to make you feel like you just gave a stupid ass answer. So when I left that interview, I felt like I was jumped by like 5 niggas. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I felt like
you weren't confident.
I felt like I just got my ass beat. Right? So I was like, I didn't know what was gonna happen.
Right.
A couple days later, or a couple weeks later, they called, was like, yo, you made it to the second interview.
Wow.
Now the second interview was an 8-hour interview, all day, and it's you and other people, right? It was me and like probably like 7, 8 other people, and it started out with. So the interview with like a bunch of coaches, a group interview. You're in a group interview and there's coaches observing this interview. And the first assignment was read this case study. It was a case study of a school. And you got to write a letter to the principal telling the principal what to do to fix the issues in their school. Right. So you got to write on the spot.
Wow.
Boom. Right on the spot to the principal. You turn in the letter, and then you have a conversation with the other people in the interview in the fishbowl format about what they need to do in this school to help that school be successful.
So you had to articulate what you had on paper.
So your ability to, your reading comprehension ability, your critical thinking ability, your written communication ability, your verbal communication ability, your listening ability, all of it. And that was just the first part of the day. Wow. The rest of the day was like 5 other little mini experiential experiences where you would go through the experience and then you would debrief with a coach. 8 hours, son.
That's dope.
That shit was incredible.
Yeah.
And like, I was a dean of MLK High School, so I knew in terms of the rigor of it, I was like the energy, I was built for it. So I knew, I felt very confident. First of all, because of what happened in the last interview, I came in with a whole different swag. I was like, I'm gonna crush this shit. So I came in like, I'm crushing it. And I felt like I crushed it. But dog, I ain't hear from them for like a month and a half. Every day I'm rushing home, checking the mailbox. Yo, like, are they calling me?
Right,
like,
so you probably
I'm
thought
not hearing.
They don't want me.
So I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
I know I killed it. How are they not calling me?
Right.
Then I got the call, man, and it was incredible. And then like, I was able to come together with other leading educators in New York City. There was a bunch of us. And a couple of people who were at my interview made it as well. Wow. And I want to say it was might have been like 20 or 30 of us, man. Maybe less. I don't remember how many, but it was a large group of us from New York who made it into this program. And then once you're in, you're part of a national. New Leaders was in 10 cities. Wow. And so they have something called foundations, where you and these 9 other cities went to Boston for the summer for 5 weeks to do your training. Wow. So we did our training, And then I did my residency with a mentor principal, and they one of the interviews they sat me down afterwards. They was like, "All right, Jamaal, you could open a new school or you could take over an existing school. What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I want to open a new school." And I wrote the proposal for the school, again, writing, and my school was approved to be open in 2009, Cornerstone Academy for Social Action Middle School. Wow. A district public middle school in the Northeast Bronx, not charter, public. And, I was there for 10 years, man. And so, I know you asked about, what it's like to be a principal. We could get to that, but I just wanted to tell you,
No, of course.
speak about the pathway,
journey, yeah.
The journey. But being a principal it was I don't even know how to describe it, man. It's incredible. Like, to have the responsibility and accountability to provide an excellent education to every single child in your school on a day-to-day basis, while keeping them safe, while inspiring them to be their best. I mean, there's nothing like that, and I took that very, very seriously, and we actually did it. Like, we, you could look up our school, man. Like, a lot of my kids came in, way behind grade level, but like our school had a reputation for like moving kids multiple grade levels when they were with us. And then we had a recording studio, computer lab, and it was hip hop infused. It was just dope. You know what I'm saying? It was just an incredible, incredible experience.
Do you believe that an environment like that, Jamaal, is more advantageous to a young person? Like, when you think about the institution of a school, right?
Yeah.
And the curriculum of a school year for a kid, depending on, where in New York you are and whatever age group you're in, it gets very rigorous, right? And a lot of times I'm looking at some of this curriculum that I'm looking at it like, this is not needed for kids at this level. They need more things that can be able to really help them grow as individuals, so that by the time that they get to a certain age, they have a lot more balance and a lot more useful skills that they can be able to use. So when you say that, it was a hip hop thing, all of the stuff that you guys had in your school, why aren't more schools doing that?
Schools and school leaders are often risk averse, and they don't want to take risk at all, and they do school in the same way that school was done to them.
Right.
So whatever the traditional sort of format of school, they kind of follow that, and you do well in this system the way it is, and if you struggle, we'll help a little bit within this system. Whereas my perspective was always, we have to innovate and blow up the system.
Yes.
And we have to do something completely different with our kids. There are foundational things and basic things we need, of course, right? But then we have to innovate, man.
Oh, exactly.
Especially, considering like we're in the 21st century. The number one skill, and I knew this 20 years ago, and it's still not happening in schools, by the way. The number one skills we need are skills rooted in entrepreneurship,
Yes.
critical thinking, creativity, problem solving, collaboration, communication, digital literacy, like so many things.
Finance, economy.
Yeah,
all of that.
that's what kids need in K-12. They don't gotta wait to college for that.
Exactly.
But we ain't doing any of that. And so, and then we got standardized testing that we're overusing. Not saying it should be completely gone, but it should be 80% reduced, in my opinion, right? And so, because in the top private schools, they don't do that, by the way. They don't even have, standardized testing where you do in public schools. And so our education system is obsolete, and we need a revolution in it. So when I'm doing hip hop, I'm not doing hip hop because it's good music and you could dance to it. I'm doing it because there's history, there's poetry, there's literature, there's knowledge of self, and kids like it, right? And it's important to make an emotional connection with your students when you're teaching them.
Yes.
Right? And that could come through hip hop, that could also come through the arts. I mean, when I was in junior high school, I had I went to Wagner Junior High School, and there was this one teacher, we had electives, and I chose animation for my elective because like I used to love cartoons like everybody else. I want to know how that shit worked, like how they make cartoons, right?
I want to make my own.
I want to make my own. So I took animation as an elective, and the teacher, the elective teacher, his name was Mr. Sacerdote. And people hated Mr. Sacerdote. Like, I don't know why they did, but when I saw him as the elective teacher, I didn't care. I wanted to learn animation. I wanted to know what animation is. So the first day, he shows me how to use this camera, and the project was I needed to create an animation using this camera and these magazines. And I don't even remember the rest of the instruction, but what I remember was looking through this magazine and finding a Michael Jordan Jumpman symbol, and immediately got the idea like, oh, I'm gonna cut this out, and I'm gonna make this animation of Michael Jordan, the Jumpman symbol, on different backgrounds. You know what I'm saying? So he's flying through Paris, he's flying through the sky, he's flying through New York City, flying through whatever. So, and it's funny, now that I don't even remember him giving us that much instruction, but I remember doing this. So I create this animation, and I watch this shit, I'm like, yo, that shit is dope. Dog, there was an award ceremony at the school. I got a 99 on this project, and I got an award. It was like my first award. I'm like getting emotional remembering this shit.
So seeing that achievement,
yo,
man,
it's like I got an award. Like my parents got to come to an award ceremony to see me get an award. And you got to understand, I was wild in junior high school. I was like wild.
You didn't care. You didn't care about those things.
I was wild. So anyway, long story short, I wanted my kids to feel that.
Same thing.
To feel what it's like and the whole animation class was self-directed learning. There was no like teacher at the front, you in the seat, we're telling you what. It wasn't like that. It was like, yo, here's what you could do, go.
Right.
Imagine we did that kind of shit in every school with every kid.
It would change everything because you would put joy into education.
Yes.
And the thing is with children,
yes,
if you can get to their joy, they will
it's
do
over.
Everything.
It's game over, man.
Game over.
It's game over.
You know what I mean? And I just want to see that happen at some point because it's needed. You know, our education system here, you know, in the country, it's failing. And if you're failing at something, at some point you have to say, enough with the old structure. Let's try something new, because we can always go back to this. We know how it works, but when it's bad, it's really bad. Let's try something different.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. And you know, I want to be very specific here. The reason why it's failing is because kids from certain communities are not having their needs met.
Yes.
So if you come from a certain community, a certain background, you're more likely to be a part of an education system that isn't working for you. The system works for kids who come from other backgrounds, right? If you come from a two-parent household where both your parents got college degrees or high school diplomas, you're more likely to do well in this system.
Because the structure is there.
The structure's there. The same structure that they did well in, they're now giving it to you in your home, so you'll do well. So the kids who do well in that system and become, I mean, listen, we have exceptional universities, exceptional legal profession, doctors and medical science. We do next level. We've done great things, right? Technology, all of it. But imagine we open up those opportunities to another 60% of the kids who are not getting it right now. imagine what we would be able to accomplish. And so that, for me, it's just all about that, right? Like, I'm sick of accepting an education system where we're just going to leave certain kids behind, and that's going to be it.
They're just fine with that.
And that's going to be it. And then those kids, they feed the prison industrial complex, right? Or worse, like end up in a situation where they get themselves killed.
Because a lot of these kids, what people don't realize too, is these kids that turn to a life of crime, these are survival crimes.
That's a great point.
You know?
Speak up, preach, brother.
Like,
yes, say more about that.
We don't, our young kids, they don't turn to drugs because they want to. They don't turn to a life of crime because they want to. They feel that that's their only out.
Yeah.
So it's a survival crime. They're doing this because you don't know where I come from. You don't know where I sleep every day.
Or they're just responding to their environment.
Exactly.
They're not even thinking about it.
No.
Like, they're just
They're reacting to what they see.
They're existing within their environment, right? And dog, and I'll go back to what I said at the very beginning. I lived in the projects, public housing, East River till 8. I left there and moved to Upper East Side.
Right.
This is night and day.
Right.
I went to school at PS 198 on the cusp of this, right? So in Manhattan, everybody knows East Side. Once you go past 96th Street, you uptown now.
Yeah.
You in the hood.
Yep.
Below 96th Street is where the white people live,
Exactly.
right? So I happened to, when I moved to where the white people live. But that school that we went to, my best friends lived uptown. Right? So my best friend, right? He, mom was killed, for her welfare check when he was young. When we got older, brother killed, cousin killed on some drug shit. Our collective together best friends do 10, 15, 20 years in prison. One of my other best friends, Poochie, killed, 19. Javier killed not too long after. My boy Paul, suicide. Like, these are my people. Like, dudes I went to school with, who we had sleepovers with, or hung out with, died. They didn't even reach 21.
Right.
And all because these are awesome kids, man. Like, my mother loved my friends. You know what I'm saying? And they just, I was lucky. Like, I was lucky to move to that community outside of where I was. And then, but even that wasn't enough because I had to move again to Jersey. Right. Who knows how I would have ended up, you know what I mean? Yeah. So for me, education, and not just education in our communities, investing in our communities is about that. Yes. So making sure kids have, their environment provides opportunity for them to be more than what they currently are and to reach their full potential.
Right, and to be more than what they see in front of them every day. Like, you can come from the worst situation, but there is hope that you can get out of this and make something of yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're not just locked down to this.
What do you do when your mom's is on heroin?
Right. That's what you see every day.
And that's what you grew up in. That's what and you live in the projects, your mom's on heroin, your role models sell crack and carry guns.
Why would you ever want to be in school?
But you're not even correct.
Yeah. Why would, like, you're telling me to sit here?
Our first instinct is survival as humans in any circumstance. So when you're in that environment, you're like survival.
Exactly.
Right? So it's just, and this goes into why I got into education. This goes into why I ran for office, because it's like those people over there the conversation we just had, they have no idea.
Right.
And don't care.
Because they come from a different world. It's a different planet for them.
Man.
Like, and that's what I think the biggest divide in our country, especially within the Democratic Party, is that there's two parties going on right now. We're gonna go into that, but it's just there's an old way of thinking, and then there's a new way of thinking, and the old way of thinking is still has its stranglehold on this country, especially in New York, when certain things, especially in our education system, right?
When you say that old way of thinking, what do you mean exactly?
Old way of thinking meaning that it's one way of doing things, right? Like we talk about the educational system, right? They know one way of doing it. This is what's worked over 70, 80 years, whatever it is. We're going to continue to do this.
Yeah.
In regards to our criminal system, right? We have kids that break the law and they have to go through this process. They got to go to juvenile. They got to go to this, not realizing, where did this kid come from? Where did this kid, what is his environment? What was he exposed to? Why is he here? And giving them chances to be able to.
And then what should we do about
what
it?
should we do to help him
help that.
rather than incarcerate him
Yeah.
and then put him into the system?
Yeah.
Right? So there's an old way of thinking, and then there's a new way of thinking.
Yeah. I
know?
asked the question. You're absolutely right. I asked the question because, I always wonder if was the old way of thinking even beneficial to us? You know what I mean?
Sometimes I think
like the old way of thinking, what it wasn't,
No.
right? And so we grind through and we get through because that's who we are.
Right.
Right? As humans, right? As people who come from struggle, as people who are, we come from the strongest, most resilient people to exist in this country.
Right.
And so, we grind through and we make it through. But was it ever really
Exactly.
good for us? And so, we were again talking off camera about how this is the moment to build something new. And during my time in education, so I was a principal in education 99 to 2020. Mm-hmm. But I was a principal from 2009 to 2020.
Right.
And during that time, think about it, 2009, right after Obama gets in, right? So hope and change, right? Now that I know more about policy, there's a lot of his policies I didn't agree with,
Yes.
right? Especially foreign policy. But the symbol of him as a black man and what that represented, was hopeful and inspiring to a lot of people. But then, so you have the Obama presidency. At the same time, you have Occupy Wall Street, which is now like holding accountable the 1% versus the 99%, right? And then after that, you have the Bernie Sanders presidential run, which was just, again,
was
a
just
paradigm
different.
shift,
Yeah.
inspiring,
Yeah.
all of it. And he loses and we get Trump. Well, not he loses
To Hillary.
Hillary beats him in the primary, and then she loses to Trump, which again was just like, thinking about that time, man, I'm thinking about like, first of all, again, people like us, lay people, I mean, you follow politics your whole life, but someone like me, for example, like I'm watching, like, there's no way this dude's gonna be Hillary.
Yeah.
Hillary, her resume, first lady for 2 terms, Secretary of State, U.S. Senator. I mean, you talk about a resume. But she ran during the time where Black Lives Matter movement was happening and there was accountability. And now there was accountability in a different way. Right. So where you could have, Hillary Clinton probably had a lot of conversations behind closed doors in her career where no one on social media will call you out, hold you accountable. But now we got clips, motherfuckers is editing shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
now it's like a whole different accountability. So she loses to Trump. And I remember that night, man. I remember Trump and his whole family walking on stage like, one, they looked shocked they won, but two, it felt like the evil empire in Star Wars walking on stage.
It felt like the end of episode, what was it? Episode 2? Or no, episode 5, I believe. Or no, it was episode 3, right? When Darth Vader is now and it's like, yo, what's going on here? Like, all right, cool, the resistance is, what's happening? What are we doing?
I'm very pleased you landed on episode 3.
Yeah.
Because the minute when you was trying to find the right episode, I knew you was thinking 3.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna let him find it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it felt
That's exactly
like.
what it
It's the
felt
end
like.
of episode 3.
Yep.
Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith.
Where these guys just walk on stage,
Right.
and I'm like, is this where we are, son?
This is where we are.
That's where we are. And then like, and he didn't disappoint in all the worst ways. Like the
Exactly.
motherfuckers
He told
ended his presidency with a global pandemic and an insurrection.
Right.
But before that, 2018 now, you got the squad elected to office. You got AOC winning big against a 20-year incumbent. No one thought she had a shot. Right. And that then inspires a whole nation of people to run for office.
So did that inspire you?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I mean, not just her winning and the squad winning, but how they represented.
Right. How they spoke, their message.
And again, like the word represent, like they're representatives, but how they represented. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, man, you know, so again, going back to Trump, there were rallying cries across the country at Trump rallies chanting, "Send them back."
Yeah.
As if they weren't American, talking about the squad.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, you know, because, you know, AOC was, you know, the most popular, you know, when she won out the gate. So everything was about AOC. So we didn't know as much about the other three. But I remember during this whole send them back situation, they called a press conference. And it was my first time seeing them together where they all spoke. And as soon as they opened their mouths, I'm like, oh shit.
They got it.
They on another level.
Yeah.
Like, y'all don't really know.
Right.
They on another level, dog. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh, this is exciting.
Right.
This is very, very exciting. And so, but still, I'm not thinking I'm gonna run for Congress. I'm in education. I'm doing my thing.
Yeah. You helping on this side.
I'm on the ground.
Right.
I'm doing my thing.
Right.
But there was a point, I want to say it was 2016. It was 2015 or 2016 where like my school had the #1 growth scores in the whole city. Wow. Right? Well, I wanted to begin to think about, okay, what's next? I wanted to either be like a school superintendent or expand my school, because my school was small. It was a 6 through 8 school, only about 270 kids. I wanted to expand to like a 6 through 12 because that would give me the opportunity to engage with higher education, but also engage with the economy, like jobs and all of that. So I was excited about that. Like, I wanted to do that. And one of my mentors, a very high-ranking education official in New York, was like, yo, Jamaal, you should go get your doctorate. So she told me about this one program. I looked at it, I didn't really like it. And then I got into this other program, Manhattanville College, that was dope. I applied, I studied first of all, I had to go to a summer intensive program to get get certified to be a school district leader. There's a certification that you need. So I had to go get that first in the summer, and I had to study my ass off for the GRE before applying to this program. And studied my ass off, got a good enough score, you know, to get in. GRE is hard, yo. And again, the rest of it was just writing and stuff, which I was pretty good at. So I got into Manhattanville and started working on my doctorate in education. It was an incredible program, incredible experience. But like I got out of the program faster than my cohort. So there was like maybe 9 of us, 10 of us, maybe more. And I finished like a 3.5-year program in 2.5 years. Like I got through it quick. And that was at the beginning of 2019. And so the city didn't approve my application to expand my school. When I started looking at superintendent jobs, they all look stale. Like whether it was superintendent or like a position in the district office, it was all using that stale language.
Yeah,
again, it
you
wasn't
didn't like that. Yeah,
I'm like,
it's keeping you in a box.
I'm not trying to go do that. Like that shit is whack. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So I remember, man, I was in Puerto Rico with my wife and our kids, and me and my wife chill on the beach, and my kids are running in the water playing. And it just hit me, man. I was like, yo, I'm gonna run for Congress. Because I looked at our current congressman at the time, Congressman Elliot Engel, and he was there a long time, but it wasn't really that. In the primary for 2018, only 25,000 people voted. Right. In a district where you have 450,000 registered Democrats.
So that means that people just didn't care.
and he wasn't doing the work to make them care.
Right.
So for me, and he won, he got 20,000 votes, and the other candidates got the other 5,000. So I looked at that, I'm like, yo, I can knock 20,000 doors myself and beat this guy. Right? In the school where I was principal at, that school was in the district. So all of the families that I had graduated knew who I was. So I felt pretty strongly that they would have good things to say about me in the community once I started running.
How'd your wife feel about you?
She's scared. She was not feeling it at all. She's not feeling it at all.
She's probably thinking about it from an intrusive standpoint. They're gonna,
Correct.
They're gonna be all in our
Scandal
family business.
was her favorite show.
Yeah, right.
You know, everything you hear about politics. She was thinking all of that.
Yeah.
And you know, my wife and I are a perfect match in this sense. She's incredibly risk averse. I need to be more risk averse. She's too risk averse. I'm not risk averse. So it matches.
So there's a balance there.
Right?
A good balance.
So she learns from me to like take more risk.
Yeah.
I learn from her to take less risk.
Right.
And we're both terrible at both of those things. But like, yo, no, she wasn't feeling it.
Yeah.
And so for me, man, you know, once I decide to do something,
It's pedal to the metal.
I'm all in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I talked to 1 million people before I decided, just to get their thoughts, you know, how do they feel about it? What, do they think it's a good idea, whatever. All the feedback I got was positive. The only one that was negative was my wife's mother, my mother-in-law.
Right.
She was just like, no, how you gonna leave your job and do this and blah, 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 blah. Because, you know, there's no guarantee you're gonna win.
It's a risk.
It's a risk.
Yeah.
But I felt confident, like, okay, if I don't win, I could go be a principal somewhere. Like I felt
Right.
like I'm good.
You had a fallback plan.
I'm good enough as a principal where I think I could get that job again.
Yeah.
But I felt very confident from the door that we were gonna win. Like I just.
You know what's crazy
that.
about what you said, saying that you didn't have that risk assessment? You did. You were cognizant enough to see what Ingle has been doing and saying, I can do that.
Yeah.
And I know how to do it. I know how
Well,
to
I
go
thought
about
I
it.
did.
Yeah,
I mean, I never run for office before.
You still had you got a plan.
I figured I'm gonna outwork him.
Yeah.
Like there's no way he's gonna outwork me.
Right.
And I'm gonna win. Like that's just what I felt. Give you a good comparison. A couple years before that, the Green Party approached me to run against Chuck Schumer for U.S. Senate.
Get out of here.
Yeah, and like I wasn't gonna do that
Right.
because one, Schumer was strong at that time.
Oh yeah.
And two, the Green Party was fringe, right? So like, I didn't think the Green Party was gonna have enough
legs.
legs to like pull that off.
Right.
Yes, I felt I was, you know, a strong candidate, but I wasn't gonna do that. So I'm not risk averse without, you know, I'm not just, yes, I jump off cliffs and shit, but I'm like,
You have
I see the
assessment there.
vision. I'm assessing along the way, to your point. So yeah, man. So all of that led to me, you know, got my doctorate, first in my class. The superintendent positions was looking corny. The DOE didn't allow me to expand my school. The squad had just won. They was representing like me pretty much. Is Black Lives Matter stuff going on? Like it was just Trump was in there. Like, it was just like, and the biggest reason, actually, this is actually the biggest reason. The year before I decided to run for office, 34 kids died within the K-12 school system in the Bronx. 17 died by suicide. One of those suicides was right across the street from my school in Co-op City. There's a 14-year-old girl who was teased and bullied in school. She went to many staff members in the school. She didn't feel anybody would do anything about it. One day after school, right after school, she goes to the top of a building and jumps off. right after school. And it was covered in some little local paper, but it wasn't like, it was almost like a blip.
Right. Should have been national
And this
news.
goes back to what I was telling you
About
happened
sending
in the beginning when I started, working at the high school. It's the same kind of thing. It's like our kids are dying, and we don't recognize the urgency of this moment.
It's like a footnote.
If that,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And so that's the thing, right? So it wasn't just like the 34 kids that died in the Bronx and the 17 by suicide. It was right around me. So this girl, so that happens in Co-op City, which is right across the street from my school. Right up the street in New Rochelle, not too far from here, 2 girls get into an argument during lunch. One pulls out a knife and stabs the other to death. These are high school kids, yo.
Yeah, so babies.
Understand, like, I was getting it popping in high school. I didn't want to kill nobody.
Right.
I didn't want nobody to be killed. We fight, whatever. But this girl pulled out a knife, stabbed the other girl to death. Same school year. This LGBTQ kid was being bullied in school every day. One day he brings a knife. Says to himself, they bully me again today? It's on.
Mm-hmm.
They bullied him. He stabs one kid to death and puts another one in the hospital, critical condition.
Wow.
And then I got one more. There was this was a big story because it was caught on camera. A young man by the name of Junior was beaten to death outside a bodega in the South Bronx in a case of mistaken identity. There was a video going around of of a young man having sex with the girlfriend of one of these gang members. And the gang members thought it was him. Caught him in a bodega and beat him to death. Brother, these are kids doing this. So I'm in education, thinking I'm part of a revolution, like I'm doing something big and important and we really gonna change the world. And kids are just dying left and right.
Around
all
you, right.
And not too long around this time, Parkland shooting happened in Florida.
Right.
So kids are dying and there's no urgency. And so that was the thing that had me like, you know what, man? I started to feel numb. I started to feel powerless and weak in my school. I started to feel like I wasn't having the impact that I wanted to have.
Plus, you tried for the expansion, it was denied. and
All
it's-
of that,
yeah.
all of the above, man. And then the following year, so now I'm remembering all of this. The following year, the sister of the girl who killed herself came to my school.
Wow.
And the parents said they chose the school because they heard of the reputation of the school and how we go out of our way to make sure our kids have the psychological, social, and emotional support that they need. My school had a reputation for this, and rightly so, right? So I'm a trained counselor, but then I also had a full-time social worker, full-time guidance counselor, almost full-time substance abuse counselor, and a visiting nurse. So we had a lot of psychological support in my school, restorative justice and all of that. But still, even in my school, man, I started to see an increase in self-harm among kids, a disproportionate increase among Latinas, and I'm like, which really shook me because I'm like, what the hell is happening with this community in particular? And my secretary was a Latina, so I would talk to her about it. But there was just all this stuff happening. I didn't feel like I felt powerless. So the running for office thing, man, that was psychologically, emotionally, all of this was happening at the same time. And it made me make that decision, man. And so that's why when I got in there, I'm not really, it's on, you know what I'm saying? Like we
I'm here to change.
like we not, this ain't business as usual.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and that's why, like, I rep the way I rep.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
nah, definitely. So obviously you win, right? So now you're in Congress, you're a House member. Tell me what that feeling was that first day when you stepped into the halls of Congress. Like, what did that feel like? Like, could you actually believe that, a guy that grew up not really caring about school to being an educator, to making an impact, to, creating your own school, being successful in that. And now I'm in the halls of Congress.
Couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I almost still can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's almost like, how the hell did this happen? Like even when I was opening my school as a principal, I remember a moment where I was like, how they let me open a school? Like, how the hell did that happen, right? But it was the same thing when I got to Congress, man. Like, I'm walking through, all these statues and shit. I'm looking around, I'm like, yo, I work here? Like, this is my workplace.
Right.
It was wild, yo. It was really, really crazy that I would be there, but I always felt very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable, man. And I wouldn't say it because I didn't belong there. That wasn't it. It was like, this is a sickening place. Like, it's not a place, this place doesn't serve the people.
Right. This place is not what people think it is.
Or what it's supposed to be.
Or what it's supposed to be.
Or what it's celebrated as, right? When you watch any movie about, or read any, textbook about American history and all of that, they give you they don't even give you the sanitized version. They give you the mythology
100%.
of what it is, right? And so, but when you're there as a member coming from where I came from, it's like, oh, this shit is fraudulent. Like, like we're not really. We're not serving the people pretty much.
It's more about the theater of it.
That's what it has been degraded to, in my opinion.
Right.
When it comes to members, right? So the members will do things for the theater of it, to get attention, to communicate, to shift hearts and minds, whatever. But I'm not even talking about that part. I'm talking about the part when I think we got to ask ourselves, who really controls Congress? Who really has the power? Who's really wielding the power? And the answer to that question is money.
Lobbyists.
Money controls Congress. Lobbyists are one of the weapons or tools of money. Money and power controls Congress, not even the members, right? The members can wield power, and some do, many do, but like donors, it's donors, especially bigger donors, who write legislation, give it to members of Congress.
So we're talking about big tech,
We're talking about big tech, big oil, big pharma, big business corporations, Wall Street, foreign policy institutions, military industrial complex, prison industrial complex. These are institutions that have organized their people, their money, and their power to wield how Congress moves. Right. And so when we ask questions like, why is housing unaffordable? It's because Wall Street dictates housing costs. Right. Because they after the 2008 crash, they bought up a bunch of housing. And now everything is based on the market. Why don't we have universal health care? Because health insurance companies manipulate the system in a way where they continue to make profit. Correct. While no legislation is passed to support universal health care. Why don't we have a higher minimum wage? Well, because there are people in Congress who are being funded to ensure that legislation doesn't pass to support a higher minimum wage. Why do we keep raising the military budget? Well, it's because the only jobs in certain parts of the country are military jobs. On and on and on. It's special interests controlling Congress, not members meeting the needs of their district. And so And then the way it's designed, where you got to run every 2 years, and the longer you there, the more seniority you have, the more seniority, the more power. It's set up where maybe every 20, 30, or 40 years, something big will happen, unless that something big comes from the outside, like the civil rights movement. And then when that happens, you're gonna have multiple martyrs who are killed in that movement.
Now, when you talk about special interests, and I totally agree, obviously, is there pressure on certain members to take the big money? Why? Because I believe that obviously, House members are different. Where you run, it's every 2 years, which means that as soon as you get elected, you now have to start, getting money. You have to start getting those donors back to be able to run for your next re-election, right? So does that pressure get to people to the point where they just say, yo, I just think it's easier to be able to just align myself with Big Pharma, so I already know that finance is there. I already know that money is there, so I don't have to worry. And the longer they stay in Congress, is that they're too far in now. They can't go back.
Yeah, like,
you know what I mean?
Like Macbeth, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes is the answer to that question. The pressure is real, and you have to raise money.
Right.
And people don't want to make 20,000, 30,000 phone calls to raise money. They want to go to a few events, support a few pieces of legislation, and make sure they have enough money to run for re-election.
Right.
That's it. And so that's the design of it. The pressure's there. People want to get reelected. It's a very, it's a very cushy job, in a lot of ways. And, you got a lot of power. You know what I'm saying? When you're a congressperson, you make a call, people going to take that call.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? So that's power,
Yeah.
right? To do a lot of different things. And so, yeah, man, but it's also corruption in the system.
Yeah.
Because we have to get...
Gotta get money out of it.
The Citizens United decision that allowed corporations to be seen as people and money to be seen as free speech is an abomination to the country and the corruption of our democracy.
Absolutely.
And so once we allow that, then what are we doing? You know what I mean? And so, yeah, we got to get big money out of politics.
100%.
Yeah.
Obviously it's a bigger question to answer, but where do you start?
Well, going back to Bernie and the squad and others in office, there are many in office who don't take corporate PAC money.
Correct.
And so they don't even do business with big money. It's all small dollars. That's how I was, that's how the squad is, that's how others are. And so that begins to create new infrastructure that will hopefully lead towards more members not taking the money, the bigger money, and really focus on small dollars so they can focus on their constituents. That's one part of it. The other part of it is legislation. We need legislation. We have the legislation. It just hasn't made it anywhere in the Senate. Which brings me to the third part of it, which is organizing and strategic organizing around getting big money out of politics.
I watched your run very closely, and you're very, very passionate, obviously, about childcare, about affordable childcare, about making sure that housing is affordable, all these things. And when the infrastructure bill came in, there's a lot of things in that bill that it's okay, but all of the things that you particularly wanted wasn't really there. And it's like when you go ahead and say, I don't really agree with this, I'm not gonna side with this particular bill, for some reason you got put on Front Street about, Jamaal Bowman doesn't agree
AOC
with
too.
AOC, exactly.
Yeah.
Pretty much the squad. You guys are not siding with Biden. What's going on here? Is there some rift? And I'm just like, for somebody who understands politics and who follows it, I said, there's something in there that he didn't agree with, and there's something that he wanted in there that's not in there. And when we talk about the old guard keeping things the way they want to, make sure that this passes because it's a good look for the country, but what is it doing for my constituents? What is it doing for the people in my district? How is it helping me bring the message to my district saying, I'm trying to get this passed, but it doesn't pass? I now have to front that responsibility. Mm-hmm. But when you say no, you tell your constituents, I'm fighting for this. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm making sure that although there's things in here that, yes, I agree with, and that can be able to help us, whatever it is, I need to stay true to my constituents.
Yeah.
And I don't see a lot of House members do that often. And that's what makes you special. And that's what makes the squad special, is because you guys are the progressive party. You guys want to see progressive legislation passed because that's going to help us be better in the long run. But yet the old guard continues to have their big claws on the actual structure of what's going on. Yeah, so man. That, when I say that, just tell me about the frustration from your standpoint about knowing how the game is being played. Mm-hmm. You're in this game and you know how dirty it is, but you can't do anything more than what you're doing.
Yeah, man. No, it's a great question and great framing, and thank you for framing it that way.
Yeah.
At this point, at this moment, at that point, so I'm elected in 2020.
Yes.
November 2020. I'm sworn in January 3rd, 2021. January 6th, 2021 is the insurrection.
Yes.
3 days later, in response to that insurrection, I introduced my first piece of legislation called the Congressional Oversight of Unjust Policing Act, the COO Act. Just pretty much calling for us to form a commission to examine what the hell happened that day. Right. Like, why weren't we prepared?
Right.
And the commission was formed. My bill wasn't cited as being the inspiration for it, but it was formed and they did their commission. Fast forward now, I want to say it was like November that the infrastructure bill took place. It was November.
Yeah.
It was the Friday after Election Day. This was an interesting time, right? Because in 2021, there was a bunch of elections across the country, but one in particular that was really big and we paid a lot of attention to was the McAuliffe versus Youngkin gubernatorial election in Virginia. Because this was like, there was a lot of attacks on education in particular. Why did we keep schools closed? Attacks on teachers' unions, on and on and on. And so that election happens there was an election in Virginia, an election in New Jersey. Thank God, Murphy was reelected. But McAuliffe lost to Youngkin in Virginia. So the Republican won, which was unexpected, right? So the next day, the New York Times editorial board writes op-ed pretty much blaming progressives for Youngkin's for McAuliffe's loss. I'm like, where did they get that from? Like what do progressives have to do with that loss? Like that was, McAuliffe ran a poor campaign. He got beat, whatever the case may be, right? So cool. So this was Tuesday. Wednesday, the editorial board writes this piece. Friday, we're in Washington voting on what was supposed to be the infrastructure bill and a bill called Build Back Better.
Yep, Build Back Better.
Which was the, for lack of a better term, social infrastructure bill. So while, yes, we support roads, bridges, and tunnels, right, we also support affordable housing. We also support universal child care, pre-K, raising the federal minimum wage, making the child tax credit permanent, lifting 50% of kids out of poverty. We support all of that too.
Exactly.
And that's what our most vulnerable communities need.
Yes.
Now understand, this is Biden's agenda.
Yes.
Biden's agenda included both bills, right? And we have been fighting for both bills for the entire year. So now we get to this crescendo moment, that Friday in November 2021, first Friday in November, first or second. We come in to vote, all of a sudden we start hearing rumblings, oh, we're not gonna vote for the Build Back Better bill because the new Dems, which is the pro-corporate Dems, wanted something called a CBO score to make sure that Build Back Better was gonna be paid for. Now understand, these people ain't won a CBO score the whole year. Last day they won a CBO score. So I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I go to the CBC meeting. CBC is pissed, but the CBC is like, yo, we support this. So right now I'm like, okay, this is something going on here.
I feel like getting railroaded.
Yes, like on purpose. Like this was moderate corporate conservative Dems making a power move.
Yes.
To make sure we vote on their bill and not the Build Back Better bill. This is what they wanted to do. They wanted to show the country that moderate Dems hold it down.
Right.
That was the play. And so, to the point you made earlier, I'm learning how grimy this place is in real time.
Right.
As all this stuff is happening.
Right.
So I'm like, oh shit. So then the CPC has a meeting, and CPC was holding it down. Pramila, shout out to Pramila. She was holding it down, fighting for Build Back Better the whole year. But at this meeting, you could tell the members in the CPC, which is the Congressional Progressive Caucus, were ready to support the other bill without Build Back Better. And to put the icing on the cake, Biden himself calls in to the CPC meeting to convince members to get on board.
Wow.
And once he did that,
that was it. It was a wrap.
Everybody was on board.
Right.
Except the squad.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And to be fair, and I've told this story other places before, but it's just this was the first time also that I felt like I was in a movie. Like I felt like, I'm in a movie. This is a movie, right? So to be fair, the CPC was going to vote right there on the spot to unanimously support the infrastructure bill without Build Back Better. Right. We was about to vote. And I was going to vote yes. I was going to be a team player.
Right.
And I don't know. I always mess up this part. And Corey always corrects me on it. Either her, I don't know if she said it first, but I clearly remember Ilhan saying, hold up. I got to confer with my team before we decide to vote on this. And when she said, hold up, that saved me and there's some other squad members who were also going to vote yes. I ain't going to call them out. But when she said that, we adjourned for a few minutes and we were going to come back and vote. Once we left the room, I was like, I'm not voting for
that. Yeah. Because you were kind of like in this trance.
I don't even know what that's called, but I know there's a thing. I don't even know.
Yeah.
But it was just crazy. So anyway, we leave. We leave. I go back to my office. I talk to my team. Everybody was clear on the same page. We're not voting for the infrastructure bill without Build Back Better. But the Democrats wanted 100% support. The bill was going to pass.
Right.
But they wanted 100% support to show strength.
To show strength, right.
And, VP Harris calls me in my office to get me on board. And I'm talking to her. I'm asking, like, what about childcare? What about paid leave?
Yeah.
I'm asking about the other stuff that we're not going to get.
So, we have the advantage. Why don't we just do this?
Well, we had some leverage.
Yeah.
And we were conceding that leverage to the moderates and to people like Joe Manchin in the Senate. So she called me and I had to say no to the VP. Well, I don't know if I said a hard no. I think I just kind of listened respectfully and kind of just let it go.
Yeah.
But then we all convened in Ayana's office and we were like, yeah, we're collectively going to be a no on this. Here's how we're going to communicate it. We left there and pretty much walked to the house together and sat together and all voted no. And we were the only Democrats to vote no. And to your point, and to what I just mentioned, why were we vilified for that?
Right.
Like, it was a bill that passed.
Yes.
We were clear on our reasons.
Why do you need to make
Why
sure?
do you need to then make the country see us as the villains?
Right.
As the number one threat to American democracy, which is how they was framing the shit. I'm like, yo, what? The bill passed. Like, why y'all acting
exactly.
like...
You got what you needed. What do you need to ostracize us for?
Correct, right? And
We're in the same team.
But they did it, and this is why we have Trump too.
Right.
Because the moderates and conservatives and the corporate Dems, they are more concerned with their own power than they are with like us having a big tent that represents all the American people. They don't want those Dems and those people in Congress, not just Dems, Republicans of course, they don't want voices like Jamaal Bowman and Cory Bush in Congress. They don't want Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. No. They don't want that because it's a threat to their entire existence.
Exactly.
These people have been coasting on their mediocrity and inhumanity for their whole careers.
To simplify it, a threat to the old guard.
Threat to the old guard.
Right.
And so they don't want that, man. No, so yes, and again, this is strategic media and political infrastructure that is already in place.
Right.
So sometimes I can say like, yo, Barry did so and so, so we're gonna make sure you write this negative story about him.
Exactly.
Put that out there.
Right.
So some of it is explicit. Some of it is implied. Some of it is like, we on the same page anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, Speaker Johnson don't got to tell Fox News to say something bad about Ayanna Pressley.
Nah, they gonna do it anyway.
They gonna do it.
Yeah.
Right? So like, that's just what it is. So we had to be vilified, man. And yeah, dog. But that when that went down like that, I was like, oh, this is some real shit. Like, these corporate Dems really feel threatened by progressives. And they don't even need to be, because everything we're asking for is common sense.
It really is.
And representative of the Constitution and representative of meeting the needs of the American people.
And that's what it's all about.
That's our job.
Yeah.
Now, yes, your friends may not have $100 billion anymore. Maybe they only have $50 billion, but they're still very, very rich.
Right.
But that's the problem. This is our economic system and our political system is very extractive and exploitative.
It is.
And it supports a racial and economic caste system. And that's the system, the old guard, that's what they're trying to maintain.
Yeah.
And they don't want nothing new.
I agree. You know, I thought about this in my head before this interview, and I said, this is my platform and it's my show, and I'm always going to do things how I want to do things. I'm not going to ever let somebody else dictate what I speak about. AIPAC. AIPAC has been around for decades. AIPAC has their, I would like to say political claws into a lot of Congress people.
Yeah.
Right? You, on the other hand, when you got into public service and you got into Congress, you didn't want anything to do with AIPAC.
That's true.
You wanted nothing to do because, like you said, you go ahead and get small donations by the people. You know what I mean? Like, that's 80% of your donations were from small hand donations, right?
Yeah.
AIPAC comes in and says, hey, listen, we need you on board and to make sure that this message gets put out there. You're like, oh, no, nah, I don't do that. And then you had one of your peoples, I remember you heard you talking about this, one of your peoples who was, I guess, friends with somebody in AIPAC handed you like this package, and it kind of just steamrolls from there, right? So we see that they're trying to get you, well, as soon as you get in, they're trying to get you on board. Obviously, the events happen over there in Gaza, and everything changes, right? My question is, when did being pro-humanity and human rights make you into a villain? Like, what world do we live in, Jamaal, where you can stand up for kids being slaughtered, just simple, basic human rights being violated, pretty much a genocide happening, and somebody can say that you're anti-Semitic?
Yeah. It's wild, man. Like, it's really...
Like, watching it in real time, obviously you're going through it, but for me as somebody on the outside watching this happen in real time, like, why are they making him look like the bad guy?
Yeah, and again, it's not just me, it's anyone who is critical of the state of Israel. If you're critical of the state of Israel, AIPAC and the ADL will use their resources and infrastructure to come after you. And when I say resources and infrastructure, that's money, that's media, that's all of it, man. And and I'm glad you made the point. For me, that issue, the issue of Israel-Palestine, is a human rights issue.
Absolutely.
In a similar way that what's happening in the Sudan or the Congo or anywhere else, in the Uyghurs in China, anywhere in the world where the human rights of people will be violated or are being violated, it is our responsibility, in my opinion, to speak out against that. When I was a kid, the most prominent example of this was South Africa and apartheid in South Africa. And in my community and the culture that I represent, we stood up against apartheid in South Africa. And so those are my values, it's my perspective. And so, as I learned more about what's going on in Israel-Palestine, I began to speak out more about it because it's wrong.
Yes.
Right? If, we want Israel to continue to be our ally, sure. But Israel has to be held accountable. We can't allow them to violate international law without consequence. And not only do we continue to fund Israel at $3.8 billion a year, plus other billions on top of it whenever there's a conflict, but we don't even criticize verbally. And criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitic. We're criticizing a state, not a people.
Right.
And so, what's scary and dangerous is AIPAC and the ADL know this, but they have an objective.
Yes.
Their objective is to make sure Israel continues to be funded
by the United States.
By the United States. And so my argument has always been, well, we should support the human rights of all people, the safety and security of all people, and the self-determination of all people. That's Israelis and Palestinians. But we never have, not since I've been in there, and for the last 75 years we know the history. It hasn't been happening. Before October 7th, it was an apartheid state.
Yes.
Before October 7th, it was an open-air prison. Military occupation on the other side. So it's been crazy. So yeah, post-October 7th, and here's the other thing too, not just post-October 7th, AIPAC and the ADL and the pro-Israel lobby, for lack of a better term, they often write and have members introduce legislation and resolutions that they want us to vote on. And so I don't even really want smoke with nobody, but if you put a piece of legislation I gotta vote for, I'm gonna vote my conscience.
Yes.
I'm gonna vote my values. And so whenever we vote against what they think we should vote for, we're then attacked.
You become persona non grata.
Yeah, we're then attacked for that, right? And so and it seems like once a month at least, and after October 7th, it was like once a week, there'll be some kind of pro-Israel bill that they would just want us to vote on and vote in the way they wanted us to vote on it. And if we didn't, we were attacked. And so it's set up, it's like they're seeking smoke with certain members to make us vulnerable to when they want to come and try and get us out of office. And so that's another special interest that's very powerful in Washington, where not enough members are speaking out against them, in my opinion. And they also exemplify the big money in politics thing, because in my race, they spent more money against me than ever been spent in any congressional race in the history of America. And then they also spent a record amount against Cori Bush.
By 8 to 10 million.
Right after my race, right? And so what's frustrating is, in my opinion, we're not doing the real work of fighting against anti-Semitism and hate in all its forms.
And that's what it's all about, is that you need to, we have to knock down hate no matter where it is, right? Hate is hate. And if right is right, it needs to be that. Like, you can't attack somebody for wanting to see human rights just be on the forefront.
For all people.
For all people.
For all people, man.
That's what it's all about.
That's what it is, man. And so, that's the unfortunate thing, that we're like, not only is the pain and suffering of some people deemed as more important than others, but we're conflating things that aren't related, and we're not having real conversations. And so, again, criticizing Israel or Egypt or China or the U.S. is a government. It's not the people, right? Think about what Harvard just did recently, right? Harvard defied Trump, and we celebrated them and was proud of them, but then they got rid of their DEI program. But we're very explicit that they're still fighting anti-Semitism. So we're going to fight anti-Semitism as we should, but we're not going to fight anti-black racism, Harvard. And so, again, old guard, maintaining status quo.
You get certain wins here, but the old guard is still doing...
And the wins you get are for our communities, are smaller.
Very.
Right?
Very.
Because I still have seniors in my district and across the country who don't have optical or dental insurance. So it's we have to do a better job of serving the people, all people, and we're just not.
And my opinion is that you should still be in Congress. But
thanks.
The reason, I feel the reason why you're not in Congress at this point, one is AIPAC, we can talk about them. But the other one was they redistrict. They redrew the district.
Yeah, man, which happens, by the way.
Which happens.
Just to be clear.
But it's just very, very strange.
Well, it's the way they did it.
That's what I'm saying, is that they literally took out, 250,000
black people
out of 16. And it's
a majority black district for 30 years.
That's what I'm saying.
Finally gets its black rep.
Ever.
And they removed 200,000 black people.
That's all I'm saying. So when I seen that, I'm like, things can't be that much of a coincidence.
No. Again, it's a system.
So it's just a bad system.
It's a system designed to maintain racial and economic caste.
Gerrymandering,
Yeah. White men are at the top of the system. And white men like Cuomo and Trump and Biden want to maintain that.
Correct.
Notice I mentioned Democrats and Republicans.
Yes, because they're all kind of in the same.
You know what I'm saying? And so Yeah, man, it's, taking 200,000 black people away. I mean, so when they did that, they tried to get me out, on my first reelection. We won that.
Right.
And then, everything happened with this one, man. But, I appreciate you saying that. But it's also like, you know, you know, you gotta trust God's plan.
Yes.
And so I feel really good to be here back home in New York full time doing what I'm doing. Like I love to be in community with people. I love to just connect and build. You know what I'm saying? New York's energy is all about that.
Oh, I'm telling you.
So I feel blessed and grateful to be home, to be back home.
Do you feel that you're more helpful now than you were when you were in Congress?
I don't know. That remains to be seen. Because it hasn't been that much time.
Right.
And I'm still getting my feet, getting firm on what I'm going to be doing next. So, like full body. Right. And so right now I'm just kind of dabbling in a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. We see where it goes.
Would you ever run for Senate?
Yeah.
You would?
Yeah. I mean, it all, I know what it feels like to want to run. Not even want to run. I know what it feels like to feel like you're being called to run. So I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be ready to run or prepared to run. I know what it takes to run and to win. So if there's a convergence of those things at some point, I might do that.
Right.
Right now, I have an 11-year-old daughter starting middle school. So that's my focus.
That's good.
I need to make sure she's good.
Yeah.
And supported and loved and all those things. And my son just got out of college. He want to help him transition into becoming a professional. My other son is going into 10th grade. Like
wow.
Want to be more helpful with my wife. Around the house and with all the other stuff.
She'll get tired of you soon.
Yeah, she probably already is. But yeah, man, the first thing I did after losing my race, quote unquote, was teach my daughter how to ride a bike.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know what I mean?
It's just
so
life.
It's
Yeah.
life, man. It's
life.
human shit.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to be there, especially they be on some bullshit, yo. They like, yo.
And that's the thing about it, is that you were just a regular person helping your community, helping your kids before you got into the halls of Congress, right? When you left, you're still the same person.
It's a great point.
So there was no conversion for you. You went somewhere, experienced something, but it never changed who you were. So when you got out of it, it's right back to business.
Yeah, it's
back to being a
That's a great point because, Corey, I do a lot of work with Corey Bush.
Shouts to Corey Bush, yes.
We have a podcast and all that, but she mentioned this before. Like Congress didn't make us.
Yeah.
Like we were already doing important work in our communities before Congress. Congress didn't give us a voice. It gave us a larger platform, sure, but it didn't make us. And so losing that, we didn't lose who we were. We're just reconnecting with who we are. And so now we're both figuring out how strategically to best utilize that, while still being, we're Congress people for life. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people don't know this. Like I could still go into the halls. I could still go into the House floor. I'm constantly invited to like we could be there whenever we want. We got our pins. Like we're Congress people for life. So that privilege, continues to stay with us.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Talk to me about the Super Pac that you're doing right now.
Yeah, so Built to Win is a Super Pac focused on the disengaged voters,
yes.
Right? The people we know, I ain't really into politics, I don't do politics, all y'all politicians is liars, you're full of junk, we can't trust y'all, right. Which is right, by the way, they're correct when it comes to a lot of elected officials.
Absolutely.
But we want to connect with those people and help them get organized around politics, not just on the national level, but on the local level. Because many of them, because they're busy or disillusioned, don't really know how it all works. And so the more we can provide space for education, engagement, and then organizing around particular campaigns, that's what we're looking to do. And so, we aim to organize 5 million new voters by 2028, and thousands, hundreds of thousands in between now and then. Because again, to your original point, there are voters that are going to respond to me differently than they respond to, Hakeem Jeffries even.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And so, and we need them.
Yeah.
In order to make this democracy work, we need everybody.
Need more people like you. Need more people like AOC.
Yeah. Corey Bush,
Rashida,
all of us, yeah.
Jamie Raskin.
Right? Is a monster.
Yeah, it's
love Jamie.
He's the man.
Yeah.
He's the man. But listen, what you're doing to be able to spread the awareness, be able to build our community, be able to talk to our community in a way that they can be able to digest it and download it, right? That's the most important thing of teaching civics to our community, because what our community doesn't realize, when we go out to vote in droves, we control the electorate. And if we understand that, knowing who your local councilmen are, knowing who the local constituents are to be able to make change in your area, it matters. And when you start there and realize the power of your vote, the power of your voice, the power of peaceful protests, the power of getting into good trouble, right? We hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. That is the power that we as a community don't realize we have. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we see that, we get down on ourselves, we get angry, we get upset and frustrated with the system, not realizing that if we can be able to take some time to settle down, look at the wide view from a panoramic lens, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. And understand that if we tap in and understand our vote matters, we can change this place.
Real talk. I mean, I'm a living, breathing example of it. We in my election 2020, there was record voter turnout.
Yes.
In the black and brown community.
Absolutely.
Right? Triple turnout from the previous election.
Yeah.
And the district voted their first black member into office, which forced them to redraw the lines and do all of the things that they did. Right. But if we consistently do that in districts across the country, in all races, right, now we're building real power. And the thing about it is, there's some effed up laws locally and nationally that people aren't even aware of.
Right.
That we often think, because I do this too, or I used to do this, there's nothing I could do to change it.
Exactly. That's the first thing you hear.
But you actually can, right? Like if you help get 10 people to vote, they get 10 people, they get 10 people. Next thing you know, you vote in an election and the candidate you supported for mayor or city council or whatever wins.
Right.
Now you feel super empowered, but then now you have a partner to work with from that position.
Right.
And so when we send, for example, when we send money from the feds to the states to the cities, that money comes into your community.
Exactly.
Now you can have a voice in how that money is spent.
Exactly.
You should have a voice anyway.
Right.
But a lot of people, they're not thinking about that because, again, they're going to work,
right,
they're paying their bills, they're taking care of their families, and they're like, listen, I want to unplug. I don't want to deal with this.
They look at life from a micro level, and so it's all right to do so because of what your circumstances
are. And a survival level.
Yes.
They're just one day to the next.
Right.
And this is where, the system has done its job well, right, to maintain what it is, right? It's like we want to keep certain people in power and everyone else with way less power. Right. We have to do these things in education, with the economy, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we got to change.
Absolutely. Jamaal, it's a pleasure.
Appreciate you, brother.
My guy.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Now, this was one of my favorite interviews, if not the best, because, you know, a lot of people that look like us need to understand that politics matter, right? Economy matters. How we mold and change our community matters. And seeing this, you know, seeing a creator like myself and a public figure like yourself, being able to have a conversation and understand how we can be able to, in the margins, improve our communities, right? To be able to have a bigger, wider impact. It's tremendous.
Dog, it's everything, man.
Yeah.
And we have the power to do it.
Yeah.
And that's, again, that's the number one thing, man. Like, the number one takeaway for this whole thing, we have the power to do it.
Absolutely.
We have the power, man. And so we just got to keep exercising that power.
Right, right.
Yeah, man.
So listen, this is Barry Grant Jr. for the All Even Podcast, special interview with the big homie, Jamaal Bowman. You know, this was great, man. Until next time, I'll see you.
Peace.